Part of the art is not only performing and projecting, but also listening. And like, the jazz musicians of the greats of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they could listen to each other. They could hear a note, they could hear a beat, hear a rhythm, hear a tone. And I'm a good listener. So it helped me to survive and also find the right tones to sit with what they were doing.
I love that. And Eddie, as a producer, and like something you said, 16 years in the making, on this movie, did you have to, as you're approaching this character, you're playing a role, you're also wanting the movie to be successful. So lead. Was it something I said? It's going to get better. Sorry, man.
You had enough, you say, man, fuck this shit. I heard enough of these broken ass shit. What time is it? Fuck out of here.
Original 1975 Dolomite at the end, and my God, those costumes are incredible. Amazing. So I want to start by welcoming our moderator for tonight. Kenya Barris is best known for creating the hit television series Blackish. He's an award-winning writer, producer, and director, and he'll soon be adding leading man to his resume next spring with the debut of the Netflix comedy series Black Excellence. And he wrote the screenplay for Eddie Murphy's new film, Coming to America 2. Please welcome Kenya Barris. And now please give a warm welcome for Dolomite Is My Name writers Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. Designer Ruth Carter. And actor Wesley Snipes. And Eddie Murphy.
Here we are.
So you guys get how excited I am. So I'm sure you're just as excited. This is, did you guys enjoy the movie? It was amazing. Eddie, we were backstage talking, and we were talking to Scott and Larry, and we described it. Eddie said this movie was seamless. And I really agree. I think you guys did an amazing, amazing job. Like literally taking. Like every moment just plays out so thoroughly.
I agree. Yeah. No, really, I love the way the movie moves and that one soft spot in it, and it's just funny and interesting from the beginning to the end.
And as we walked out, Scott and I turned to each other and were like, wait a second, we're in the Billy Wilder Theater. So we just want to apologize for the front page. It's just a joke. Sorry, it's a great film, don't worry.
I like double indemnity.
It really, as a writer, I told Scott and Larry, it is amazing to see them be able to take the biopic and elevate it again and again and again to such a high level, and to see this character who is to so many people enigmatic and like we don't really know him, what made you sort of get into the world of saying you wanted to get into the Dolomite?
Well, Scott and I were obsessed with Rudy Ray Moore when we were in college. And it wasn't until like 16 years ago we got a phone call that said Eddie wanted to meet us. And we're like, holy shit, Eddie Murphy wants to meet us.
16 years ago?
Yeah. And so we
Long time.
Yeah, we went out to the office and we walked in and Eddie started doing lines from a movie we wrote called Ed Wood. And he was doing George Johnson, he was doing Bela Lugosi, and it was amazing. And then he said, you guys know who Rudy Ray Moore is? And we're like, yes, we know who Rudy Ray Moore. I think he thought he would have to educate us about who Rudy Ray Moore was, but we were literally obsessed with him.
We knew Rudy from the 80s VHS days.
Up close and personal.
Yeah. And I see that-
VHS is tape. But don't
It was analog.
And so instantly we knew right away that like we got it. Like Eddie wanted to make a sort of Ed Wood style movie about Rudy, and we were so into it. And a couple days later, Eddie got us in a room with the real Rudy Ray Moore. And so we were hanging out with Rudy, and Rudy told us his story. And Rudy was aware of his own myth. He liked, he was a larger than life character, and it was great. And one of the things we really took away from that time period with Rudy was he came in as Dolomite. He came in the flashy suit. He came in with the bravado. But after an hour or so, he just kind of relaxed, and you saw it's kind of like the tired guy who had been, taking this act on the road for so long.
Yeah, because when you know someone from their persona, you know the act. And now we're seeing a guy, and it's like when you've been on the road for 40 years, you're beat down, and sort of the idea of like the Dolomite Is My Name sort of became the premise for the movie, which was there's Rudy and there's Dolomite, and these are two different people, and that really struck us.
So I'm on the stage and I'm intimidated constantly when I'm around this kind of talent. You were two older white guys writing about one of the most prolific, characters, what he did in terms of cinema in general, but in terms of for our culture, how he advanced the culture. And Eddie Murphy calls you 16 years ago. Are you just honestly, like so often, I really want to ask you because I'm like, you guys get to write about us. Were you intimidated when you got the call to say you're going to get to do this movie?
We should have been intimidated, but we weren't for some reason. And it was because we had so much love and respect for Rudy, but we also have so much love and respect for Eddie. And we felt when we were doing this movie, it was both a tribute to Rudy Ray Moore, but it was also a tribute to Eddie Murphy. In the sense that we really wanted to make a movie that got everything that's, Eddie's one of the most talented actors of all time, as far as I'm concerned. And so the idea that he could do comedy, he could do drama, he could do songs, and it was like, let's do a movie where he does it all in one place. And so for us, it was always in the service of working for Eddie Murphy.
That's right. I honestly have to say,
Eddie Murphy was the master.
he's right here. Wesley, he's right here. I got a chance to work with Eddie on Coming to America, and it was, it was breathtaking and all those things. And literally, and when I heard that Ruth and Wesley and everyone else who came to be a part of that, and this movie, there's a family, and there's a legacy that brought everyone back together. Eddie, you got them to sit down in the room with Rudy. Did knowing him influence how you decided to play this character, and what made you say that you wanted to do it? Because you can do what you want to do. What made you say this is something you want to put your talent into? And
I thought that his story was extraordinary, and I didn't know him. I met him a couple of times. I didn't really know him. I thought his story was great, and I thought that it would be, fun to do. More than anything.
Why did you think it would be fun?
Because he's kind of like a hero of mine, and I thought that his story, the way he got his movies made, and the way he got his records made, and the way he did stand up, I thought was, he's been a hero of mine for years and years. So I knew that it would be an interesting story all played out.
Do you feel him in your lineage?
What do you mean,
like in terms of what he did and what you were able to do and things like? Do you think that he opened doors, or do you feel?
No. We had my trajectory is the exact opposite of Rudy's. That's one of the reasons why I think I was a big fan of his and found him fascinating, because I kind of got in like really, really easy. I didn't have to go through back door. I got right in SNL and right in movies, and I love to say this in front of a bunch of SAG actors here. I only had one audition. I love to see actors say that. Even if y'all like me, the smile go away when I say that. What the fuck you need one audition? But I had the exact opposite. Actors hate to hear that. But yeah, I had the exact opposite. So it wasn't like he opened doors for me,
but for everyone.
For everyone,
yes.
Yeah.
And I think that was, honestly, I sit here and I have to like keep, making sure I stay cool. But like, this is Black excellence. Honestly, this is Black excellence, and it gives me chills when I think about the amazing Ruth Carter, when I think about the amazing Mr. Wesley Snipes, when I think about the unbelievable talent of Mr. Eddie Murphy, and which you guys are able to sort of thank you because you brought this together for us to do. But I feel like I have to keep asking because you guys have gotten to the point where you take the jobs you want to take. You know what I'm saying? Like, Wesley, what made you say this was something that, because this role was, I haven't seen you like this before.
Do you remember Noxzema?
This was like, you played this character.
The hook was to work with Eddie, and we had an opportunity to look at the body of work, the library of work, and we saw that we worked with De Niro and Pacino and not Pacino, but Connery and all of these great actors, but I hadn't had the roster of talent that comes from our community. So I'm like, wow, I got to work with all of the masters, from the community, and you sometimes your prayers are answered. You put it out there in the universe, and then the ancestors and the great mothers and fathers, they listen and they call you up in the body of Craig Brewer. And they say, hey, Eddie was thinking about you for this particular film. And I'm like, cool. let's go, baby.
And I was thinking about him because I remember everything. I remember Noxzema. I remember White Men Can't Jump. I remember everything you've done. And I've known from the beginning. I said years ago, I told him.
We're mutual fans. I'm sorry.
But Wesley Snipes can do everything. He does drama, he could be funny, he could kick ass, the girl, he does the whole shit, and I knew that. So
Eddie is a cinephile. If you sit with Eddie for 15 minutes, you will sit there and know that he is a student of film and television in a way that you would be mystified by. Like, literally, he, honestly, and I think that's something that I look to all of our young talent coming up, study your craft. Know your craft.
Yes.
Honestly, and
know the past.
Know the past, because you can't go forward without knowing.
Read.
Going and getting to that, the amazing Miss Ruth Carter.
From Sparta.
You had a really, in this movie, like I don't know if you guys understand, like, she is an icon, like in every way.
Without a doubt.
Nice of you to say. In every way, and how she carries herself in every way. But the way that you prepare for a movie like this, Eddie's character, Rudy Ray and Dolomite, you had to do two completely different sets of wardrobe, and think about that from who he was to who he became. Like, when you start preparing for something like that, how do you sort of say, I'm going to, one, do it right, and then two, have the battle? Because it's gonna cost money and things like that. Like, how does your mind prepare for something?
I sort it out. I think about the 70s and what it meant to me. I was a child in the 70s, and I was that little girl peeking through the, the keyhole at, my parents and their friends in the basement, listening to music and, you know, slow dancing and stuff. And I remember all of that. And I wanted to see that 70s come to life again. I wanted to see the people that I knew, the trends, you know, the denim and all of the things that really made the 70s real, not a mockery, you know, not a 70s party, but a real 70s film. And then there's another layer that is Rudy Ray Moore. And I didn't quite know exactly how to depict Rudy Ray Moore, so I asked Eddie in our fitting, and I said, you know, what do you think? Rudy Ray Moore's look is different from Dolomite. And he says, well, I think he should wear those like leisure suits, those little short jackets with the pants. And I felt like everything I remembered about the 70s, he remembered. And I said, what about like those marshmallow shoes? And he said, yeah, I had a pair of those.
Yeah, dude. Marshmallow platforms.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, like, you know, growing up on the East Coast too, there were a lot of things that had names like, you know, Matador pants.
Matador.
What are Matadors?
The pants that
Those
come
are
right
the
there.
pants that come up
Built-in cummerbund.
Yeah. So, you know, when I put Eddie,
Antonio Banderas.
yeah, so when I put him in a pair of Matadors, I felt like, Eureka, there he is. And I just remember talking to my staff, you know, like, you know, we found a piece of this real person in this Matador pant. And Eddie is standing in the fitting room in the mirror looking at the pants, and he's touching the waistband, and he's looking and looking. I just felt like there was a connection, and that continued to happen.
It's amazing what clothes can do for an actor.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And like I noticed the relationship you guys all have to the wardrobe and to the clothes. Like Eddie's in shape. Eddie kind of stays kind of, you know, but like Rudy was not. And I noticed that you played in the clothes as Rudy differently than when Dolomite started coming to life. You know what I'm saying? You gave him a different wardrobe, and you gave him like that character started becoming a little bit different than Rudy was. You know what I'm saying? It got sucked in a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? The Matador became a little bit, you know, a little bit less of a hiding thing and more of a bravado thing. Like, how do you guys do you talk when
Well,
you're...
that's the magic of Eddie Murphy. He is going to embody the character. He is going to do his work. If you do your work, you're part of it. And, you know, my part of it is to create the costumes and, you know, kind of have an understanding about where we're going. The same with Mr. Snipes here. And he performs. So you see a different swagger in Rudy Ray Moore than you see in Dolomite.
That's right.
And that's all him.
You see it in...
Yeah, making a movie is a collaborative effort, and performances and everything. That's all a group. When you see something that's working, and the moments that work are a group of people, you know, that made that moment work. It's never just the actor doing it. And what Ruth does, you know, it gives the actors, you feel like your characters come to life. It gives them a pulse. She takes it to the next level.
I love that.
And I just want to say really quickly that it's so easy to get the 70s wrong. It's so easy to get the 70s jokey. We've all seen those movies where they're wearing platform shoes and bell bottoms. What she was able to do was take the outrageous costumes of Rudy Ray Moore, but make them feel like this is what people lived in. Yeah. You know, there was really just a feeling of that Rudy wore these clothes. It wasn't funny that he wore these clothes.
And it was the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like hanging out at the Orpheum, and I was just having fun hanging with the extras.
That was one of the greatest days.
Because there's hundreds of people who all have
extras.
Ruth's eye on them. They all look like you're in a time machine with these people.
We had a lot of fun.
You know, Wesley, your character, Derville, like, his character was a little bit different than...
Really? Well, I didn't think so at all.
He was already there, and they tempted you with something. They tempted the character with something that he wanted, and you played it so well because I never quite knew if he was in or out.
He was ghetto fabulous. And everybody's ambiguous in ghetto fabulous. No, you know, I didn't have a whole lot to go on his personal life, and I didn't, only a couple of the films I had a chance to see him in the persona, in the real. So I didn't want to create a character that was characteristic of what they said about him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they said that he was a drinker, and that he said that he didn't do very much on the show, and he was a problem. I didn't think that was, you know, the way to go for the character, and I wanted something that would be honorable to this man here, and also the family of of Dervell Martin. That something could be, you know, they could be proud of.
Did you talk to his family?
I did not. No.
Well, I mean,
I bet his daughter was at the premiere.
How'd she look?
Yeah, was it?
No,
she was attractive girl. But she loved what she did in the movie. I noticed she was very complimentary.
Well, for me, that was the name of the game, to create something. Even though I didn't have all of the elements that I would normally use or draw upon as a character actor, I thought, well, let me create something that's, you know, going to be appreciated at least by Dervell Martin and hopefully by his family. And then, you know, I could hang with all these comedians and stuff like that.
I feel like seeing what you guys wrote, what Craig directed, and seeing what comes to life, like that is the collaborative part, which I think Eddie talks about, is it's almost impossible sometimes to think how movies get to be good.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
A person thinks of a thing
miracle.
in their head,
It's truly a
and they
miracle.
write it down, and someone else says, I want to buy that. Someone else says, I can bring it to life, and someone else says, I can make that character perform. And someone, you know, the collaborative process to make it good. When you really think about it, it's the best of us as human beings.
And it's super rare when that happens.
It is.
Most movies don't work.
Yeah.
Most TV shows don't work. Most records don't work. We don't even hear about the stuff that comes out. We look at the top 50 movies of the year, but most things don't work. So when it all comes together and it works, it's fucking incredible.
I remember when we first met with Tim Burton to do Ed Wood, and I think Tim was making this up, but he was like trying to warn us. He says, you know, I talked with some computer scientists, and they said if you run all the variables for making a movie through the system, you can't make a good one. Because once you input all the people and the weather and the budget,
On paper, it can't happen.
It's
On paper.
impossible. It won't be good.
It's true. It's true. On
It
paper,
is
can't
true.
happen.
I mean,
So it's a miracle when everything works out.
did you
Well,
guys,
what's funny is because you know, whatever, we're in the season where we're doing a lot of these things, where we pull up to these events, and it's basically the cast of the movie and us in a car, and it's invariably someone turns to the other person and says like, no matter what happens, no matter if there's only 5 people there, you did a good job. It becomes like you're pulling up into the last 5 minutes of our movie.
did you guys feel that this was something special when you're doing it? I mean, I'm literally, I'm like, I don't know how these people get together. And
Well, we knew it was special before the movie happened because I don't know if you know this. We broke a rule, which is our agent 25 years ago said never write for a star. Because stars are crazy, and they change their minds, and they have a meeting with you, and then they forget they ever met you. And you'll spend a year writing that script, and then it'll just go into a hole. And Eddie playing Rudy was such a special idea that we broke the rule this one time.
I don't think.
Thank you for breaking it.
Thank you for everything else.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think
it
it
would
could
be
happen to
great.
anybody else. I really feel like it could not have happened.
Well, no, Scott and I have been really blessed by we've been able to write movies we want to see. And Eddie Murphy as Rudy Ray Moore was a movie, like, if we hadn't written it, we'd be there at 10 a.m. on Friday when it opened. That was the movie we wanted to see more than anything else.
And I think Netflix was the right place for it.
Absolutely.
Probably the only place.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I think that's where we're seeing the changing
Of
of
the
guard.
choices.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we all got brought together, and this thing like we're seeing comedies are having a hard time. You know what I'm saying? Especially comedies that have sort of like they're not super big moments, they're based upon real people and grounded, you want to tell real stories. Like this is a place where you can find it, and you can keep finding it and finding bigger and bigger. And we see the traction of this movie growing, and it's becoming big audiences and things like
It's
this.
been great over the past weekend where I got so many messages from people who saw it on Thanksgiving with their family. And at first I was like, oh my God, you know we say motherfucker 300 times in this movie. I'm not sure you can watch it with your mom on Thanksgiving. But they loved
Mom
it.
had a heart attack.
Mom had a heart attack.
They
but
put their
Mom
weight on
loved
that
it.
turkey.
Well, it honestly for me is, I like Eddie. I study and like really want to know and really want to see what happened and what the trends are and how I can sort of learn from things. To see Ruth, who I'd never worked with before, like to see that what she was able to do, to see Wesley be, you say nice, but it's a different version of that. You brought this character he was everything when that wasn't a thing you could be. You know what I'm saying? He was sort of like open to everything, and he was sitting, in a place that it was ghetto fabulous at a time when we didn't really see those characters. And to see Eddie passionately come and do something that he wanted to do in a way that I feel like it really at every point, like you honored Rudy in this character and the genre and the times, and the idea of that independent spirit, which I think is really, you and I were talking about, Wesley and I were talking about in the fact, is really important. You honored it, and it was a guy who had higher aspirations than the world had of him. And you wanted to give
as many of us can relate to.
As many of us from every place, can relate to, and you gave him dignity. And I feel like dignity was something that a lot of other people kind of wanted to brush off. You know what I'm saying? And the only story that really matters in Hollywood is green. And this story made a lot of green. You know what I'm saying? And I think that was something really special.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
It really was. I was thinking like literally you guys have written a lot of biopics and we've talked about this, and I was going to ask them, what made you choose this time period for this movie?
Well, it's interesting. When we first talked to Eddie about it, we assumed we were going to tell sort of do the entire filmography of Rudy, including Human Tornado and P.D. Wheatstraw and Disco Godfather, because it was very important to us that we always ask that question: why is this person remembered? What is important about this person?
What is the last scene going to be?
Right,
And we always have to back into that last scene, and we knew the last scene had to get us to Rudy being the godfather of rap.
Yeah.
And so we assumed we'd have to work our way up to 1980 or 81 to get there logistically.
Yeah.
But once we started the writing, we just fell in love with the Chitlin circuit and with Rudy recording an album in his living room and selling the album out of his car trunk, and this is like, and the X-rated party records. This is a world we just had never seen in a movie before. And so sort of like the start of Dolomite was like page 10, I was like, he's not going to make Dolomite till page 60.
And also,
so we had to rethink things.
When we did the research, all the great stories were about the making of Dolomite. Derville Martin was a part of Dolomite, and so we sort of wound up, and also like the very last scene in the movie that actually took place. That took place at the Dolomite premiere in Chicago at the Woods Theater. The idea that Rudy found out that they were doing extra late shows to 2 a.m. and he said, "No, I'm not going to go in. I'm just going to entertain people on the street." And for us, that was such a beautiful way to end the movie. We had to figure out a way to bring the idea of him being the godfather of rap to that moment. And so when we came up with the idea that a young kid is there who is imitating Rudy, and to that, it felt like that gave the movie a real ending. And so, the only thing we cheated on was the fact that there were so many key Rudy moments from other movies, like parts of Human Tornado end up in this movie. Put Your Weight on It's from Disco Godfather. We felt we were only going to do one Rudy Ray Moore movie. You got to have him say, "Put your weight on it," I
know that. Ruth, I have to ask you, doing a movie this time period, like how do you sort of like the quantity of clothes and things? How much of it is like you're going to find stuff, and how much of it is like you're making it?
There's a combination of everything. There's costume houses here that have collections that we go to, and it was very important to me that they went for normal clothes from the 70s and not just picked up all the fancy stuff, so that we could have a background base. And then Dolomite, Eddie had 75 changes, and we had to create most of them, build most of them. So we had like 4 tailors working simultaneously. I learned a lot from that. Like 4 tailors making a pair of pants is not a good thing, because they all will fit different. So, but we really worked hard to sort of separate the background and give it a base for the palette for the film, and then all of the rejects that didn't work on Rudy's character or Dolomite's character went to Dorval. People don't know that. He doesn't even know that. So I was like, oh, that didn't work on Eddie. I'll give it to Wesley. And even in one of the scenes, Wesley, Eddie says,
happy.
He was very happy. They didn't work on Rudy's character. They were perfectly on Dorval's character. And they were close in size, so I was lucky in that way. But even there's a scene where Rudy gives them gifts for Christmas, and he gives Mike Epps a shirt in a box, and he says, oh, I was going to keep that shirt for myself, but I thought you would like it. And I was like, that's actually true. That was made for Eddie, and now it's going to be for Mike Epps. So, it's a juggling act, the whole thing, all the way through.
Oh, well, you do it beautifully. Honestly, I was talking to Eddie back in the station where you're talking about comedy and actors. And one thing that, Wesley, I'm a huge, huge fan, and you can do it all. Like, Eddie said, you can make people laugh, you can kick ass, you can be serious, you can be, an asshole, you can be endearing, With that being said, like, you and Eddie, honestly, the thing that it just so, honor and look at you as is, you are actors before you go to the comedy. Like, you literally have to bring your professional, like your chops to this. And so when you looked at this role, was it hard for you, Wesley? First, did you say have to decide what moments you were going to ground this in reality, what moments you were going to say I'm going to, how did you sort of make that decision?
I always approach a character with trying to ground him in the reality of the experience that's true to his world or her world, and the people who live that world have to believe it. That's my measuring stick. But working with all of these comedians, I was like, I just want to be able to survive. And listen, part of the art is not only performing and projecting, but also listening. And the jazz musicians of the greats of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they could listen to each other. They could hear a note, they could hear a beat, hear a rhythm, hear a tone. And I'm a good listener. So it helped me to survive and also find the right tones to sit with what they were doing.
I love that. And Eddie, as a producer, and like some of you said, 16 years in the making, on this movie, did you have to, as you're approaching this character, you're playing a role, you're also wanting the movie to be successful.
Don't leave.
Was it something I said?
It's going to get better. Sorry, man. You had enough, you say, man, fuck this shit. I heard enough of this bullshit shit. What time is it? Fuck out of here. You motherfuckers gonna talk all night. What was your question?
Was it hard for you to separate the different roles and say you have to be Rudy Ray, Dolomite, and try to make sure that this thing you've been putting together for 16 years, how did you sort of keep that all in frame?
Well, it's separate things. Once we get the movie going, me trying to get it going for 16 years has nothing to do with it once we get a start date. And it was important to me to capture the real person and show that Rudy Ray Moore is a person, and that Dolomite is a character, So that was the challenge. And the biggest challenge is to be funny, but not to use my moves. It's like I have my own little moves and faces. All actors have this stuff that they do. It's okay, you gotta be funny like Rudy Ray Moore. That was the challenge.
Well, it's interesting because Eddie, I don't think he would look at himself as impressions. He's the best impressionist I've ever. The idea of being able to, I say, Eddie's number one. Jamie Foxx is up there. With people who
but doing voices.
No, being able to not voices are the
embodying
smallest part.
Character.
It's embodying. It's embodying. I would sit with Eddie and just we were talking about something, and Eddie, out of the blue, KRS-One would come up, and Eddie couldn't have been prepared for this. And pitch perfect, not necessarily the voice, but the embodiment of who KRS-One was. Wow. You know what I'm saying? And like the idea of like being able to step into a person, and I feel like that is a God-given, talent that I don't know if I've ever seen it before. You know what I'm saying? Was there something about Rudy that you had seen since a kid, and you were able to step into not just Rudy but Dolomite as well?
I've always been a big fan of his, so and I watched his movies so many times. It was kind of easy to go into that, and I've always been a good mimic. I've always been able to do that.
But how did you find Rudy? Because we saw Dolomite, but you were able to find Rudy and show me the bridge between those two.
Because I had met with Rudy before. I'd been around, I talked to him and met with him, and he was a real person, and he was nothing like the Dolomite character.
Right.
When you're talking to him, just you and him talking, he's just a regular guy like this. So I had a reference.
Well, it really, to me, is one of the things that spoke to me about this movie. We actually, Craig Brewer, the director, we chose him who did an amazing job. But we were able to, get him to go do Coming to America, which Eddie said that it's a black fantasy, it's a black fairy tale that was like really personal to him. And like for us to get this white guy to come do it, like we had to go sit and watch Dolomite, and I walked out of it and I was like, anywhere I got a sign to say that I'm so, it was, the characters he brought to life felt so real, and so, the people that you guys wrote, like he gave them life in a bigger, that way that I even saw possible, and I feel like, did you guys see it on the page?
No, you started seeing it come together on the set. Like I knew that we were getting ready to do something that everybody involved with it was kind of like part of this Rudy Ray Moore cult, and we all loved the idea of doing the movie. And we thought, like, I know I was thinking, I'm going to like this. And it came together, On the set, you would see it like, hey, wait a second, I think everybody might like this. You start, halfway through it, it was like, hey, this is really coming together. A really interesting movie. Everybody's going to just dig. You don't have to be a Rudy Ray Moore fan to get into this. That was like halfway through you started seeing it come together.
Yeah, there were scenes that I didn't even make it into the movie that I remember was so much fun on set, watching them shoot, and it's not even there. So
What do you remember?
Oh, I remember Craig Robinson singing this song on stage, and it was so like it had such a groove to it, and the whole room was dancing, and everybody was in period clothes, and they were doing all of this like a Barnes photograph, a painting, and it was just a magical set when you see all of those elements like really working together.
There was a moment where Divine Joy Randolph, if you ever see the original Dolomite, Craig shot her doing this thing where she says, "Oh, Dolomite, I'm so happy." It's from, and literally, if you visited the set at any point during the making of the film, he would sit you down and say, "You have to watch this," and he would show her doing "Oh, Dolomite." I actually made Ruth t-shirts. I made a t-shirt that said, "Oh, Dolomite, I'm so happy." Not in the film.
But no. The crazy thing is, it was never supposed to be in the film.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the script, and there was nowhere to put it.
Right.
But I think Divine just started doing it, and it was like, "Oh, Dolomite, I'm so happy." She had the head nod in the time. It was great. It was just like
coming home tomorrow.
just telling it over and over and over. We're like, "What are you gonna do with this?" He says, "Probably nothing, but it's so good."
And here's the thing: Netflix has been the most perfect experience of all time. But the thing that pains me a little bit is no like DVD extra features where you would see, "Oh, Dolomite, I'm so happy."
We might do that. We might figure out a way to figure out to get that. And what you guys have been able to do together, honestly, is really easy if someone wanted to section this off and say it's a movie about, a period of exploitation or this guy. This is an American movie, and that's what Ruth, you, and Wesley, and Eddie. To me, Eddie is the largest box office grossing African American actor in the history of film cinema.
Wait, the history of what?
Cinema.
Say it again, the largest what?
Largest grossing box office African American actor in the history of cinema.
Yes.
You scared me. I was like, what the fuck? What am I saying? No, but with the idea of, and Ruth and Wesley and you guys, this could be easily sectioned off this, but it's an American story.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Netflix and the things that the things that we're being able to see now is that the specificity is universal. You know what I'm saying? The ideas of that, telling these stories that are really a piece of Americana.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And because they might be sectioned off, or people might say, well, that's a black story, or that's a story about, Jewish people. That's a story about, it's a piece of I always feel like America is like a piece of lasagna. You know what I'm saying? Every layer counts, and you need every layer to make the bite taste as good. And I kind of feel like you took this story, and you all came together, and all of you guys are icons, and to come together and tell a story and ground it with all your talents. Honestly, I just want to say thank you for, really, really doing something you didn't have. You had to do. None of you guys had to do, but it was important because it really speaks to all of us.
Yeah, man.
It really does, and it's important that these stories are told, and that we can really sort of, have the younger generations understand that you can be good at what you're doing, and it's about telling a story about human beings. And that's what we all say. Norman Lear is one, I love Norman. He has a bumper sticker, and it says, "Just another version of you." And I think that is what these types of stories, when they're able to come out and achieve the success that they're doing, really allow us to start telling our specific stories and allow our kids to tell their stories. It's just really important. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Netflix.
Thank you, Netflix, for having me.
We lost 3 more.
Thank you, Rosario.
We lost 3 on that. That was sweet and heartfelt. I can't believe how you leave on that. How you leave on that? We lost a bunch of them. Look, he leaving on it. Hey man, it's
Kenny
almost
was
over.
talking.
It's almost over. Huh? That's a good thing, man. See, you kept it real. Hey, I got the peak.
Eddie, I think the funniest Q&A we ever did was at Big Eyes. And our movie Big Eyes, and my very elderly aunt and uncle walked out.
During the Q&A?
During my Q&A. And they were at the top of the theater, and I called them on it, and I said, "Aunt Joan, Uncle Bert, what are you doing?" And she goes, "Honey, we've had enough."
I got to ask you, how comfortable did you get in writing black dialogue? I work with a lot of, I'm a TV writer, so I work with a lot of white writers. How comfortable were you getting together? Just keep it real. And being like, no, I think this is how they would say it.
Here's the thing. There's a lot more motherfuckers in this movie than what was on our page. You know what I mean? We would do.
So you didn't really connect to the culture? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying there were 3 on the page.
What are you trying to say, Larry?
When they got Mike Epps and everyone on the set, there was a lot more. So it's like we had the benefit of knowing the real Rudy.
And you loved him. I can tell you loved him.
And we also, here's the thing. I did an event at the American Cinematheque with Ben Taylor and the real Jerry Jones, and so we knew those guys.
We tried to be as true and authentic as we could, and we do lots of homework, and so we
Homework.
Yeah, and we're like reading about Jerry Jones. And Rudy.
Read.
We're like, wait a minute, these guys grew up like an hour from each other in Arkansas. So then we're like just Googling, like, what did they have in Arkansas back in the 30s? Well, they had canned mutton.
Canned mutton.
So then we said, let's have them talk about canned mutton.
Yeah.
And hopefully it feels authentic to someone who lived in Arkansas back in 1940.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And thank you guys.
Office extraordinary.
Take a step back, guys. Guys, from Folsom. Guys, gotta take a step back. We drove here from Folsom for today. Guys, take a step back, folks.
Let's go. Shamanabba. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, yeah.